at the end of the day, I constantly remind myself when I'm in there, when the lights are on and you're in there and everything is green, that like, this is a super cool project. You know, people that I know and people that work and live around me are eating food that I grow or that we grow. Like, I have tons of support from the Churchill Northern Studies Centre, obviously. This is not something I'm doing on my own at all. I've had a lot of support from Growcer as well.
So first off, for everyone who has just joined, I want to say thank you for joining us. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie. I'm the editor-in-chief at the Growcer, and I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. You can see Carley and Corey on the screen. So Carley is the sustainability coordinator at the Churchill Northern Studies Centre and the operator of their Growcer system, which sells produce under the Rocket Greens brand. And Corey is the co-founder and CEO of the Growcer. It was 3 years ago last month, that Corey and the Growcer team helped install the project in Churchill, and it's come a long way. So as you have probably already known or just heard me say, Carley and her team celebrated reaching a milestone of 40,000 Rocket Greens sold. So we do want to celebrate that. So before we get started, you can type your questions in, like some of you have, in the questions tab on the side. And for the first half of the webinar, I'll be moderating part of the discussion. And then at the end, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A. Today's webinar will be recorded and sent out later this week to everyone who has registered. And I will start the Q&A, but let me just show everyone what we've been looking at for everyone who's joining us. This is the inside of the Churchill unit, and you can see the outside, and you can see the Rocket Greens logo, and this is part of Carley's subscription box. So without further ado, let's start the Q&A. So my first question is for Carley. Can you briefly share how the project started and some of the milestones that you've had through the past 3 years?
Sure. Thanks for the double intro, Stephanie. That's great. And hi, everyone. Yeah, so I wasn't actually working at the Churchill Northern Studies Centre when like the ball got rolling for this project. So maybe Corey will be able to elaborate a little bit when he speaks next. But it was sort of my understanding that our previous executive director, or one of our previous executive directors, kind of came from like a food security background. And in 2017, Churchill lost our land link when the rail line washed out after like a monumentous blizzard that happened in the spring. So Churchill was left without a connection by land, and our usual channels of acquiring goods and stuff was like rattled up a little bit, which brought to fruition this Churchill Regional Economic Development Fund through Western Diversification, which was a fund that was basically targeted for Churchill to sort of help with some recovery from, such a tragedy of losing the rail line. So the Churchill Northern Studies Centre was able to access that funding, and likely there was a lot of back and forth between Corey and Grant McNeil at that time. And yeah, we ended up being successful. The funding was expedited, which allowed the unit to actually make the last ship of the season. So it's pretty incredible to think of this thing being manufactured in Seattle and then trucked to Montreal and then take the whole route around the eastern side of Canada into Hudson Bay and arrive in the fall of 2017, and then get brought out to our site, which is 30 kilometers outside of town. So yeah, pretty big deal. How I got brought on board is also like a very Churchill story of just bumping into someone in the airport. Our former scientific coordinator, Dr. Leanne Fishback, bumped into me in the airport. She knew I kind of like to dabble in some sort of indoor growing things. And she basically said to me like, "Hey Baz, you still like growing stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, we have this thing coming and I think you'd like it." So she basically just briefed me quickly as we were just about to board the airplane to Winnipeg. She just said, like, "Give me a call when you get back." So yeah, through a weird series of events, like I returned to the study center. I had worked here previously, so it was a bit of a return for me. And yeah, kind of walked into it with not a lot of information. And yeah, they just sort of handed me a folder and sent me on my way. So you asked about milestones. So since that time, I mean, when you start something like this and you have no experience, like everything felt like a milestone. Oh, like first seed, first lettuce, first, like everything was a first of everything. right down to like first flood, first drought, first disaster, but some really really memorable things from from the early stages would be the first market of taking all of that fresh stuff. It was probably like -40, and we trucked all that stuff into town and set up a table in the complex, and just having people come and look at it and touch it and smell it. That was really exciting. We started the Launchbox subscription service not long after that, which was also really exciting. Okay, now we're putting this stuff directly into people's houses, partnering with the stores, and then basically just making it through the first winter, making mistakes, learning. There's been a lot of milestones, and then of course, most recently, hitting the 3-year mark, and just, that pretty much blew me away. And 40,000 sold is, was also like, when I crunched those numbers, I was just like, wow, and in all reality, we've grown much, much more than that. I've given away a lot to local food banks and community groups. I pad up the launch boxes quite often with extra items if they're available. We sneak some home, we use some in our little staff gathering. Well, pre-COVID times when you could interact with strangers, we gathered a bit more over some fresh herbs and stuff like that. So yeah, I still feel like every day is a milestone. Keeping plants alive in subarctic temperatures all winter long is something else.
Yeah, definitely. And Corey, for you, I know Carley said, celebrated 3 years. What does it mean for Growcer to have such a long-standing partnership with the Churchill Northern Studies Centre for 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild to think it's already been 3 years, Carley? I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday that we were getting all this started. And I think without, or the way I think of it is, we kind of had our start with Carley as well. So I think the word that you used, partnership, is very much in line with I think how we approach the relationship in general. And we've worked alongside Carley to work through all the initial kind of bumps in the road of what it takes to grow veggies at -40 or -42 sometimes. So I think, at the end of the day, the partnership means a lot to us. I mean, when Alita and I started Growcer, we were very purpose driven, and this was the reason we decided to get into this business. We wanted to leave an impact and do something that was meaningful. And through working with people like Carley and her community, that we really get to kind of feel a sense of purpose, I suppose, about what we're doing every day. So yeah, it's super exciting to be here. I think it's a sign of a lot more exciting things to come in many years. But I think, the approach we've always taken with all of our customers and with our business is putting their best interests at the core of every decision we make, and working alongside them, because starting a farm is no small feat. It's fraught with challenges and bumps in the initial, the first few months of any project. And I think, people like Carley come to lean on us as they need to, whenever they need to work through those challenges. And I think that's the role I see us as a company playing, kind of facilitating that early startup process.
Mm-hmm. And Carley, you mentioned it before about your launch box. Can you just share where you currently distribute what you're growing, and what have you learned through that distribution process?
Sure. So right now, at this moment, we are currently doing about 50 weekly subscriptions for local households. And we also do 2 local grocery stores and the hospital cafeteria, which at this time isn't open to the public, but is feeding anyone that works at the facility, and also the residents of the hospital. So those are our customers at this time, but we did tap into a couple of businesses in our limited bear season, like the COVID edition of Churchill bear season that just happened. But through the 3 years, that's been a constantly evolving thing. Like one year we tried these restaurants, and then next year they didn't call, and we just sort of adjust. This is probably, like, due to COVID, actually, this has probably been the most stable, like where I kind of know what's coming every week, because there hasn't been a lot of movement or shifting in for anyone. I mean, people aren't traveling, only certain restaurants were operating, at like a regular-ish capacity this year. So it was, but I'm happy to have the launch box specifically because that's Churchill people, and that means the most to me out of all of this. And on top of that, like, you know, the nature of the system is that you're bound to harvesting a certain amount of plants every week. And at least if I have those guaranteed people, then I have an outlet for my produce, like regardless of if I make money on it or not, at least someone gets it in the end. So it's like a security feature for me to just be like, okay, these are just going to people, you know, I know who likes what. And yeah, it's small town that way.
And can you explain a bit more for those who are not familiar? What is your launch box? Is that Rocket Greens? Can you tell us a little bit more about the setup, how that started? How did you know what to price?
Yeah,
and how does that work?
Actually, you had asked what I'm growing. So yeah, if you were to ask Corey, he would say that I'm probably like a Growcer user that's got the most intense amount of variety going at the same time. We do half shelves, which is now frowned upon practice, but we do it all the time in the Growcer to make sure that we have all sorts of different things going at once. So the launch box basically is like a weekly subscription for locals. You sign up and pay in advance. You become a member of the CNSC, which is like an annual membership fee, very affordable, but it sort of goes with our mandate of being like a community-driven organization. And then for a very affordable price, you can have a standard launch box, which is 6 pieces of produce each week, or a mini launch box, which is 3 pieces of produce each week. And basically we kind of stick to a similar format each week, where the standards are getting like 1 or 2 types of lettuce, a spinach, a kale, and then like a category that we call other, which is where we sort of shuffled like the Asian greens, like the bok choys and things like that, or collard greens, mustard greens, and a few different things. And then everyone also gets a herb each week. So our herb area has 2, 3, 4, like often as many as 6 or 7 kinds going at once. And then each week we are growing 5 or 6 varieties each week. And it usually has like a leaf lettuce, a butterhead lettuce, spinach, kale, like, and something else, or 2 other things. So.
And so someone's asking what's included in the launch box. And I know you said you have multiple different plants. Do you combine them with any other things? So when they sign up for a subscription, is it for 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, or what are they getting when they get it?
Yeah, we bill month to month. And then what you get is every week is a fresh delivery of one of each of those things, like I just said. So if you were Stephanie, if you were a standard Launchbox subscriber, I would bring you your blue bag on Wednesday, and in there would be a butterhead lettuce, a leaf lettuce, spinach, kale, something else, and a herb. And then the following week, you bring me back your empty bag, and I give you a new full bag with all those things. But we rotate, so it wouldn't be the same butterhead lettuce each week or the same leaf lettuce each week. We kind of shuffle through, and your herb will be different each week as well. So trying to give everyone some variety, some different things to work with. But the beauty of the Rocket Greens and the fact that it's so fresh, well, essentially alive when we deliver it, is that they keep for a long time. So I'm not sure what all my subscribers are doing, but for me personally, like if I just got 1 bok choy, I can keep that in my fridge for up to almost 6 weeks. So I might save that one until another time when I get another one, and then I can do like a big stir fry or something. So there's an enormous fridge life for the produce, which I think allows people to be a little bit more flexible. You know, the food that we buy here in the grocery store is so old already. If like I bought broccoli 2 days ago and I pulled it out today and it's yellow already. So if you don't eat it right away, you end up throwing it out. So I like the fact that Rocket Greens allows me to save up stuff. Like I get the collard greens and then I save them until I get the Thai basil. And then I use those together because I have a thing I like to make or whatever. So, I mean, everyone's got their strategy, but I think most people who are subscribed have figured out how to store it well. So, you know, we all have our busy weeks and our off weeks when, you know, you're not ready to make a big salad, or you're just not, you know, you're not into it. So at least it lives, like it can last a little bit longer for those times when you're ready, and then you can do something big or more elaborate, like whatever works for your schedule. So.
Yeah, and I know we're calling it by different names, launch box, subscription box, but the brand name you came up with is Rocket Greens. So can you tell us more about the backstory on that?
Sure, yeah. So like we're a very casual, small team here at the Churchill Northern Studies Centre. You know, again, like in pre-COVID times, we would all ride together in a vehicle, and it's about a half an hour drive from town out to our site. So yeah, like often we talk about work things or hash through problems, or a lot of times we're just, being silly. But yeah, right away, as soon as this project started, like I was like, oh, we need a name, we need to call it something. And I had kind of known from the beginning that I wanted to call the subscription service launch box. So we were just like doing a brainstorming session while we were driving, and like I can't take credit for the name. The name actually came from one of our postdoc. She was an employee and postdoc student working with us briefly. Her name is Hillary, and she was like, you guys know that the slang term for arugula is rocket? Like in most other places, except for I guess in North America, we don't call it that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And the Churchill Northern Studies Centre is located on the site of the former Churchill Research Rocket Range, which there's some pictures behind me of what it looked like when scientists were actively launching like thousands of rockets for Northern Lights research and, potentially other things as well. So we're out here in a rocket launching site. We're surrounded by rocket launchers. Rocket is a slang term for arugula. So yeah, it kind of all came together like that. The logo was developed by a company in Winnipeg, and we fell in love with it immediately. And yeah, it works for us. We really like it a lot.
And I see some questions that are just about the details. Someone wants to know, how much do you charge monthly? And someone also wants to know what your turnover is like between subscribers on a month to month, or how many do you gain? How many do you lose? Is it fairly consistent? I know it's COVID times, but what are people paying monthly, and what are you seeing in terms of subscribers?
So a 6-piece box is $20 a week. So we bill monthly, but some months have 5 Wednesdays and some have 4. So it's either 100 or 80, like depending. And then we just do $10 for the mini. It's half the amount, like nothing complicated there. We kept it real simple, very affordable. It would be cheaper for them to buy it from me directly in the subscription than it would be for them to purchase it from the grocery store here. So that was a little bit of like tricky work on our part to sort of slip it in there like in a good price and then keep it easy. We want to keep it easy as well because we would have people paying me cash potentially at veggie pickup time. We do offer a credit card option for people who want to renew automatically, but yeah, we kept it real simple like that. So $20 or $10 a week, depending on which box you take. And to answer the question about turnover, we've had very little turnover, actually. Most people who leave are moving away, like they've come for work and then are leaving. And some of those people return seasonally and then will start up again. But when I look down my list of standard subscribers, there are like an enormous amount of names that have been there since the very first week. So that's really exciting to me. People who are into it, like I jokingly say that I've captured like all of the veggie eaters, like the hardcore veggie eaters in Churchill. It sounds a little nefarious. I haven't captured anybody, but I think the people who are into it have figured out that they're going to use that amount and they're happy with the amount, and then they're willing to pay that. So.
And Corey, a question for you. You've seen different distribution strategies work for different communities. What core elements are you seeing that are part of a successful strategy?
I think the number one factor is getting that community champion, someone like Carley who is tenacious and gets out into the community and gets in her truck and goes around and signs people up. I think ultimately that was core to Launchbox's success at the outset. Because, like Carley said, by the time the project started, we had done this in a kind of, it was all precipitous. It was, the rail line just flooded. We need to hit this. We need to go very, very quickly. So there wasn't much time for forethought on how we were going to get to do that. But despite that, we were still able to sign up a bunch of subscribers pretty much right out of the gate. I think within the first several months, right, Carley, of getting that launch box pretty much filled up. And I think that's factor number one. I think community buy-in is super important. But I think naturally when you have someone like Carley at the helm and being the face of the project, people want to support that. People want to be a part of that. And I think more and more consumers are wanting to buy local whenever they can. And especially, like Carley said, when the price at the store is more expensive than just buying it local, it's an easy kind of decision to make for people. But across all the distribution strategies, I mean, we look at wholesale to restaurants, like Carley said, retail stores, and CSAs. Generally, a large amount of volume does come from CSAs. When we look at our network, a lot of people tend to gravitate towards the CSA model. There's probably several reasons for that, not least of which is the fact that they can plan better. So Carley knows she has 50 some odd subscribers. She can plant the 200 plants she needs and sort of grow on sort of custom order, so to speak, so that she minimizes waste. So I think that predictability and the fact that people pay up front, they place their deposit, if you will, gives a little bit of a safety cushion or just a better ability to plan for growers. So we do tend to see that a lot for people, and yeah, it allows us to pass on savings straight to the consumer too, because there's no middle person.
Mm-hmm. And someone's asking quite a detailed question about Health Canada regulations. Is that something that you had to do food safety wise or extra regulatory concerns? This is a question for Carley, but Corey, feel free to jump in after. They're wondering if you had to meet certain regulations before being able to sell the box.
Well, actually, Corey can maybe elaborate a little bit more on this, but we were directed that as long as we're not altering the food or preparing we're basically just picking a plant. We're not, preparing any food. So we're just operating as small farmers, in the same way that farmers markets and other people like that do. So we do have a commercial kitchen here on site. And when we do have a cook here, we have a number of our staff are trained in food handling, but it wasn't like a hard requirement.
Yeah, Carley's right. I would tell that person to reach out to the sales team within Growcer. We're familiar with the food safety requirements in different jurisdictions. It depends on your circumstances and your local and regional health regulations, but for the most part, from a federal jurisdiction point of view in Canada, at least, the CFIA doesn't mandate a formal food safety program to be put in place, but we do follow, generally accepted, basically good agricultural practices. So we try to follow industry best practice when we're training operators on, how to just stay sanitary within a system, how to monitor their water health and so on to make sure we're doing what we have to do. But there's no formal, call it inspection requirement or anything like that, federally speaking. But again, speak to our team because they'll be able to advise based on your specific circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And this is another question. It's a two-parter. Two people have asked this question. The first is, how long did it take for the project to become profitable? But another question we have coming in is, if you don't want to use this as a business, if you want to use it to support your community, is that option available? So I think these are two questions. One is, I guess, what are Churchill's goals in this? And is it to become profitable? If yes, when did you kind of see that coming to play? And if not, talk a little bit more about what are your goals for the project if it wasn't to turn over a profit? And this is for Carley.
Sure. So I get asked a lot actually by curious potential new users about how we make money and how things like that. And I would say that the Churchill Northern Studies Centre, we sell lettuce now, but that's not actually what we do as an organization. We're like a research and education organization. Our mandate has been to understand and sustain the North. We're not really operating the unit per se for profit. We haven't changed our pricing in 3 years. If the project were to pay my wage, it wouldn't make any money. We bring in interns. The unit itself only maybe requires 20 to 30 hours a week of work, but I work here full time. So I would say that we're kind of already running it for the benefit of Churchill and for the broader Northern Manitoba. We still call on support from other organizations within Manitoba, like the Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative, the Northern Healthy Foods Initiative, through Indigenous and Northern Affairs, to support us so that we can do other things with the project aside from just the growing and distribution of the rocket greens. So we've trained an intern Last year I took on a full-time intern. So clearly like the project itself doesn't require 2 people full-time attention, like 80 hours a week attention. That's not how it's designed. But we brought in our intern, Brittany Weber. She's probably watching right now, and she's gone on to grow food hydroponically in Kluane, Yukon, on a different brand. So she may be the only person in all of Canada now that's cross-trained on 2 types of containerized gardens. So that's very unique. We've taken on some additional projects. Well, in a non-COVID year, we did some outdoor growing of potatoes and did some seedling starting to support local growers with the help of Northern Manitoba Food Culture and Community Collaborative. So we're trying to like sort of increase the community engagement and be a little bit more involved, and continue to look at like the food security thing as like a broader issue, or just the sustainability of remote communities. So yeah, we grow and sell lettuce, but if you actually plugged in all of the time and everything that we do, it probably doesn't look that great on paper. It does generate revenue for us, and we're super happy with that. But we're sort of like running it as an opportunity to just constantly be engaged with other communities and share our experiences. Like I think that's just become a big part of my day to day. But if you were to carve out just my time spent on the unit and the pricing and stuff, I think that we're falling in line. And when I draw up my harvest plans and I make my contacts with our customers and partners, I treat it as a business. I want to put out as many units every week as I can. I understand that that's important for the health of the project. It's great to offer all of those different things to the community. So I've spoken to lots of potential entrepreneurs, and I believe in the economic model that the Growcer puts out. I think that that's valid. We're running ours a little different. We don't meter the hydro. We don't really keep track of how much water goes in there. We just do it, and then try and share as much as possible with others about what that's like. So.
Mm-hmm. And Corey, this is also a question that you can answer as well, kind of building on this question. Someone wants to know, if you don't want to charge your community members for the boxes, but give it as a food security project, so I'm thinking more donations or partnering with community organizations, how much would the estimated cost be to run it for a year? So I think the issue is, can you have a model that is heavily donation based and still be able to cover your costs of operating the unit? Have you seen that before? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say every community is different. So the operating cost in Churchill is going to be very different than the operating cost in, say, Harvey at Nunavut. So, I would talk to someone specifically about their location and their local costs. But by and large, if we're using a project like Carley's as a baseline, it's about $30,000 to $40,000 a year in operating costs. And again, that's with the caveat that, as Carley said, that would only be the time she's spending, in the Growcer unit. It's fractional amount of a full-time person. From a community donation point of view, one model we've seen work quite well is to sell a portion of what is grown and sell that sort of for profit to basically generate that $40,000 a year in revenue to offset the operating costs. And essentially, once you reach that break-even point, everything else you grow that is surplus is gravy, essentially. So to give a sense of what a normal system can do, it can produce somewhere in the 400 to 450 weekly heads of lettuce. So using that as a kind of a comparator. And if you were to grow and sell about half of that at a similar price point to what Carley's doing, the other half could be donated free of charge to community members in need or community organizations. And Carley does a little bit of that here and there with surplus, but as a core business strategy, we've seen it happen a couple times with some success. So it is something that's possible. And then, depending on the donor base of any given organization, if they know they can count on $40,000 a year from donor, hypothetically, 100% of what's grown could be donated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I do want to switch gears a bit here to the actual inside of the unit. Carley, what has your experience been as an operator? Thinking back to the first days the system arrived, can you walk us through what the really early days were like for you?
Yeah, it's hard to remember now. I mean, we've lost all sense of time this year in general, but yeah, I mean, I had a lot of anxiety. At first, we had coined the term plant anxiety. It's not really that catchy, but it was true. I had a hard time believing that everything would be fine through the weekend. And I was making my partner drive me out here on Saturdays and Sundays to just look inside and make sure everything was alive. I've learned to come to terms with that now. I don't come out here as much on the weekends, but I still try and get, if anyone's around, to try and get them to peek their head in. We've struggled a little bit with connectability. We had a bit of connectability in the beginning, and I recall Corey phoning me like close to midnight when I was at a Christmas party and being like, "Your unit is in alarm." There's nothing I could really do. That would be that's one big challenge about our unit, is that also the distance between town where I live and where the unit is located. It's not actually that easy for us to check on. It comes with an expense and of time and money to go and just have a look and make sure everything's fine. But I've had Corey will attest to this, and he, just before we started this webinar, he showed me what the new products look like, and I have had every struggle imaginable, every type of equipment failure, just about every type of flood, every type of drought. So there's no surprises left, I don't think, now. So when we find things that are wrong, we can solve them right away. The plants are very resilient. They can bounce back after being without water and stuff. So I've moved past a lot of that plant anxiety, and I take a lot more in stride now. We have a saying around here. It involves a curse word, but like my new motto is, it's just effing lettuce, because sometimes you get really wrapped up in things that aren't working right, or like harvests that aren't as great as others and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I constantly remind myself when I'm in there, when the lights are on and you're in there and everything is green, that like, this is a super cool project. People that I know and people that work and live around me are eating food that I grow or that we grow. Like, I have tons of support from the Churchill Northern Studies Centre, obviously. This is not something I'm doing on my own at all. I've had a lot of support from Growcer as well, especially in the early days. Corey and I talked a lot. He was my big little brother. I was speaking to him on a more regular basis than my family, and always positive. Yeah, it was very much a partnership. So we've come a long way to this like sort of steady point that we're at now, with these 50 launch boxes and regular standing orders from the grocery store. It's been, it's been a long journey, and lots of different like steps along the way to get to where we are.
Mm-hmm. And before I ask Corey how his early days were, did you have prior experience in growing hydroponically before you started the unit?
No, never hydroponically. My boyfriend and I lived in a remote cabin for most of my days in Churchill, and it didn't have running water. So we had like a bathroom, but the bathroom's sort of like non-functional. And the shower stall in there, we had made into a garden a couple of times just for something to do out of boredom, long winters. And it's also nice to have a sunshiny bathroom to go into in the wintertime. So I'd grown some chili peppers and tomatoes. So I dabbled in indoor gardening, but never hydroponics. But I was familiar with like light schedules and adding nutrients, like nutrient schedules and stuff like that. So that part wasn't super foreign to me. And then I think I feel lucky. I have a little bit of electrician background, so that the equipment is not intimidating to me in the unit. But having said that, you don't need a lot of experience to do this. I've trained already a couple of different people that come from all types of different backgrounds to assist me. And once you figure it out, like, there's nothing in there that's super technical. Most things are just like plugged in like a normal plug. Everyone knows how that works. So it's pretty easy to use. It's the plants that are confusing.
Yeah, and Corey, what were the early days like for you? Because it would have been one of the first projects the Growcer undertook.
Yeah, it was the very first. So it was very much, going through all the learnings kind of together, Carley and I, and trying to figure out, like, there was no roadmap for anything like this, right? Nobody had really tried to do this before. And I think it was kind of, working through every challenge, everything that ever came up through the initial, let's say, call it the first year, was something new to both Carley and I. So we were kind of working through that learning curve together. And so I think that's key, is that we had to go through that experience and that grind for a little while to get a sense of what things need to get done at the outset to make future Carleys more successful more quickly, and kind of ease that initial transition period. So there's been a lot of energy, time, and effort from our team over the last 3 years invested into how do we make the initial upfront training better, how do we support customers better, especially around the plant side, because we're taking things that to some extent require some technical experience, and the question is, it's Growcer's responsibility to translate that into terms and in a way that makes sense to an operator that has no plant experience. So knowing that's where I think a lot of our energy goes, is making sure that we're able to provide that level of expertise centrally, and then sort of act as a knowledge hub, I suppose, to all of our customers to interact on the plant side science piece of things. So I think, the core part of what we do, and I think what makes it unique, is that long-term model where we knew early on, especially with the experience Carley and I had together, it's not a matter of drop off a box, here you go, Carley, have fun, grow a bunch of lettuce. It's very much a long-term, basically ad hoc training program, right? Where as Carley learned through the initial things of, hey, that was a warning sign last time, I should look out for that the next time. They're all things that you kind of just have to learn on the fly, and the Growcer team is right there with you along every step of the way to help you learn through those steps. But there's no better experience than hands-on experience in getting to learn that, and it's a large part of what we're doing right now. And in a post-COVID world, we want to get people hands-on on a real farm, because even just with the experience with Carley, like that first year, her and I, with real plants running a real system, was the most valuable. None of that could have been taught in a classroom. So we're going to be announcing a lot more in the coming year on how we're going to be able to do that as a company and to the wider audience of all our customers. But that's what I would say would be the long-winded answer to your question of how we're able to, I guess, support the initial stages.
Mm-hmm. And Carley, for you, what was the most important support that you received when starting out?
That one's hard to nail down. I mean, I guess it was nice of Corey and a couple of others from Growcer team to just allow me to message them like whenever, because I mean, nobody here really knew, no one else here could be my shoulder to cry on. So yeah, there was a lot of outside of work hours texting, and I guess you could say I was complaining, but it was more just like I didn't know what was going on. So I just need someone to talk this through. So the team was really helpful with that. There was also a lot of support in the early stages of getting us set up with some of our, I guess you could call it business contacts. The Growcer was able to connect us with executives from the Northwest company and sort of facilitate like having our produce added to the local grocery store. So I wouldn't have really known how to approach that at all. In fact, I still don't really know how to approach that. So there was definitely some like business side support. I think it became clear pretty obviously, like right off the bat, that we weren't really going to run ours like a business. So, but that is there if people are entrepreneurs and wondering how to break into markets, that obviously the team has experience with that. At pretty much any problem that I brought to their attention in the first year, they were flinging some kind of like, let's try this like solution back at me. So, we experienced our first plant root disease. So there was a lot of things we tried to alleviate that. We've had heat tapes and floodings and pump replacements and like all different types of stuff. So like, I don't think that there was a problem that I brought to their attention at first that wasn't addressed fairly timely. I mean, of course there's delays, but as northern remote living people, we're used to waiting. But things were taken care of and still continue to be taken care of pretty promptly by the company. So I'm happy for all the support that I get even now, like not just in the early stages, but continually. It's like I think Corey just nailed it in his long-winded previous answer, that we're still learning together. And even though my unit doesn't look anything like the ones that they're making now, there's still lessons to be learned out of this one. And I'm super happy to let everybody know as well that we were successful in getting some funding from CRED before they closed out the fund. And we'll be upgrading at least the bits and pieces of our system that we can upgrade to bring it a little bit more in line with the new ones that are coming out now, so that we can continue to share and work with Growcer. And we'll hopefully we'll be better growers after we get some of these new things. So I'm pretty excited about continuing on with that and getting some Growcer staff up here again for that installation. And yeah, we'll retrofit our unit and upgrade it as much as we can so that we can keep going.
And speaking of changes, you operate quite seasonally. So how do you adapt to the seasonality of the community? I know you talked about you have a launch box, and month to month you see some changes, but how do you adapt to the broader seasonality, summer, winter, for other communities that are kind of more seasonal? How did you adapt, and what would you share about that?
Yeah, so like I touched on a little bit, so having the launch box as a steady outlet is super helpful, because like I said, you know, if one week you had a restaurant and they were taking 20 things from you, and then the next week they're closed, which is very common here, at least I have somewhere for that produce to go. We have active food banks and things in town here, so if I'm 100% sure there's no way to actually market it, we can give it away. That's no problem. But yeah, I just mostly I'm really attached to my paper calendar. I'm sure that the most of the team at Growcer would make fun of me, although I know that Drew also likes paper calendars, so that's exciting because we work together a lot. But I just keep really close track of my calendar. I contact restaurant owners 6 or 8 weeks before they open. Like I keep that in my calendar. I don't wait for them to come to me. I make sure that who's going to be your cook this year? Can I talk to them directly? Do you guys think you're going to take the same stuff as last year? And I try to keep on top of those little seasonal things that I can keep track of. Our own organization, same thing. If we're getting bookings or we're fortunate enough to get bookings, I'll try and divert or be prepared for that. Although I admittedly kind of don't really know what I'm going to do now, because we have so many launch boxes that I don't really have a lot for any other businesses aside from the 2 grocery stores, including our own cafeteria. So the Growcer did sell us a educational cabinet, which is like a scaled down version of the Growcer, which holds 90 plants. So I've tasked the interns with firing it up, and we'll probably lean somewhat more heavily than we have in the past on the cabinet to provide us with those extra 30 units a week that maybe we can utilize. We're growing lettuce in the cabinet right now that we're going to donate to Christmas hampers for the local Christmas cheer. So it works. It's not quite as good as the unit itself, but it does grow things. So yeah, I think that just being flexible and rolling with it, and then like a little bit feisty and pushy when it comes to the seasonal businesses. Like I really try and force the herbs on them, because that's an easy moneymaker, and a lot of professional chefs like really like that kind of stuff, and having access to fresh each week is important for them. So yeah, just like getting to know how your community operates, and then bugging those people basically is how I've done it. But yeah, it's good to establish good relationships and just sort of keep on top of the seasonality. We're not as the same as most places. A lot of places that are touristy are like on in the summer and off in the winter, whereas we're like on off like 3 different times of the year. So yeah, it's been tricky, but for the most part, like the businesses that do use Rocket Greens like to support us. In fact, one of the local restaurants post a menu item that says like local Churchill basil included or whatever. So like they'll likely continue to be basil customers. They've reprinted their menus to include like that offering. And I don't take it personally if they're not interested or the pricing isn't working for them. Like that's also fine. I understand that fresh food is heavily subsidized, and restaurants that purchase in bulk get really great pricing, and it's actually hard to compete with that using our own costs. So it is what it is, but like I've got my launchbox community, and that to me is like my favorite part. And So it's easy to just take whatever surplus I've got and just dip it into those bags. Cause yeah, those people are here. I see them all the time. They're part of like of Churchill as a whole. So yeah, that's how I made it work basically.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've adapted it to Churchill and I guess your specific community. I do want to wrap it up here, so I'll ask one of the final questions. This is probably more for Corey, which is the Growcer unit suitable for all crops and areas in Canada? Are there decision-making tools for communities to understand what kind of system they may want to consider? What are the factors they need to consider? I guess, Corey, what are you seeing? What are some of the decision criteria communities are going through to understand if this is a fit for them?
Yeah, so the system is not suitable for everything. So it's really good at growing a certain type of vegetable. So I would say that's the first caveat is to understand what it's capable of doing and kind of working your way back from there. It tends to do really well with fast growing kind of products because then, like Carley said, it's a 4-week cycle from in the grow room there, and I think 8 for herbs. So that'd be the first thing. And then the other thing is there's an entire team of people at Growcer who specialize in working with people and partnering with them to kind of have that one-on-one discussion to work back from what do we know about what the community wants, what are the community needs, and then how can we better respond to that with a local production approach. So Growcer becomes, in my view, kind of one tool in a toolkit of kind of addressing the broader food security issue. So it's only one sort of facet, but I think generally speaking, it's hard to give kind of a general statement that applies to everyone. Everyone's circumstances is unique. So we tend to work one-on-one with people to really try to tailor the project to the needs of their specific community and really try to understand what their goals as an organization are. Very similarly to how Carley mentioned that the CNSC is all about learning about the North and sustaining the North. I think that was always kind of a key part was the education and overall kind of community outreach element of her project. Others prioritize profit. Others prioritize, donating produce on a weekly basis to community organizations. So I think you start with a needs assessment of what it is that the local community is lacking from current solutions and where is it that Growcer can fill some gaps. But like I said, it's something that we have to do on a one-on-one basis. Core part of our model of working with communities to understand their needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that pretty much is all the time we have. I do want to thank you, the audience, for joining us today and for all your questions. And a special thank you to Carley and Corey for taking the time today. If you want to learn more about the Churchill Northern Studies Centre and support the work that Carley and the others are doing, you can visit churchillscience.ca/support and follow them on social media. And that's a good way to also understand more about how their project operates and kind of more of the details there. To learn more about the Growcer, you can visit us at thegrowcer.ca or follow us on social media. If we did not get to your question today, have no fear. Feel free to message us through our contact page and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. Just building off of what Corey said, a lot of the questions some of you are having are very community specific. And so we have people who will be able to answer more directly to, I guess, your specific conditions, and the answer will be a little bit more valuable for you and what you're kind of looking for. So definitely reach out through the contact page and someone will help answer. But thank you again. Thanks for joining, and everyone have a great rest of your week.